Have you ever seen someone whose body seems to be losing smooth movement, but the problem is not just muscular, not just neurological, and not even just emotional? The pain moves, the stiffness lingers, the sleep gets disturbed. The hips do not feel supported, the legs feel restless, and the person feels like something deeper is off, even when the symptoms are hard to fully explain. This is where most people misread the chart. Because when Vata disturbs the ninth house, you are not looking at a random pain pattern. You are looking at a very specific breakdown in the body's relationship to movement, support, nerve flow, and forward direction. And if you are a healer or astrology student, this is exactly the kind of pattern you must learn to read with precision. The ninth house in body mapping relates to the hips, thighs, tailbone area, sacral region, sciatic nerves, and pituitary-linked hormonal functions. So the moment Vata rises here, the body begins speaking through dryness, instability, irregularity, nerve irritation, and disturbed locomotion. Now listen carefully. Vata is not just air in some vague spiritual sense. Vata is dry, light, cold, irregular, and mobile. So when Vata aggravates the ninth house field, what do you actually expect? You expect sciatic nerve pain, hip joint cracking or instability, dryness in the joints of the hips and thighs, sudden sharp pain in the sacral region, lower back stiffness, reduced pelvic lubrication, difficulty sitting for long, variable gait, coldness in the lower limbs, wasting in the thighs, restlessness in the legs, and insomnia that gets linked to discomfort in the lower back and sacral zone. That is not a list to memorize mechanically. That is a pattern to understand. Because every one of those symptoms is saying the same thing in a different language. Movement is happening without adequate support. Structure is present, but nourishment is weak. The nerves are active but not settled. The body can move, but it cannot move gracefully. Now let us get into the planets shown in this slide, because this is where the interpretation becomes truly sharp. We have Moon, Saturn, Venus, and Ketu involved in this Vata-sensitive zone. This is not a casual combination. This is a very intelligent and very revealing cluster, because each of these planets adds a different layer to the same disturbance. Let us start with Saturn. Saturn is one of the clearest Vata amplifiers. Saturn slows down, dries out, restricts, cools, suppresses, and turns temporary discomfort into chronic patterns. Saturn is connected with nerve tissue, thighs, knees, calves, arthritis, rheumatism, coldness, paralysis tendencies, chronic disease, and long-standing complaints. So when Saturn influences this ninth house body zone, I immediately expect the possibility of chronic sciatic irritation, stiffness in the hips and sacrum, restricted mobility, coldness in the lower limbs, and pain that repeats rather than resolves cleanly. Saturn does not simply create pain. Saturn creates duration. Saturn creates repetition. Saturn creates the symptom that teaches through persistence. That is why these people often say it comes back, or it never fully leaves, or it is worse when I overdo things, lose sleep, travel badly, or break routine. Now let us bring in Ketu. Ketu is extremely important here because Ketu often acts through abnormal reduction, depletion, deficiency, fragmentation, and disconnection. It is associated with hypostates, deficiency patterns, reduced material cohesion, endocrine deficiencies, confusion, dissociation, and a feeling that something is missing or not integrating properly. So when Ketu joins a Vata disturbed ninth house, the problem is not just pain. The problem may become strange pain, inconsistent pain, hard to diagnose pain, reduced lubrication, loss of tissue confidence, subtle weakness in the sacral hip axis, and a deep sense that the body is not holding itself together in the way it should. Saturn says this is chronic, dry, and restrictive. Ketu says this is reduced, disconnected, and difficult to define. That distinction matters, because once you understand Ketu properly, you stop expecting every symptom to be loud and obvious. Some of the most difficult patterns are the ones that feel incomplete, shifting, vague, or strangely destabilizing. Now add Moon. Moon governs mind, emotions, fluids, food, and the subjective experience of comfort and discomfort. Moon has a Vata Kapha nature. which means when it gets pulled into a Vata heavy field, the physical disturbance becomes emotionally leaved. The person may become more sensitive to pain, more disturbed by irregular sleep, more mentally tired, more vulnerable to symptom fluctuation, and more emotionally drained simply because the discomfort is inconsistent and difficult to predict. This is why a good astrologer should never describe a condition only through anatomy. Moon reminds you that the body is being experienced by a mind, and this is also why some people with this pattern suffer more than the visible symptom suggests. The pain is one issue. The anticipatory tension around the pain is another issue. The disturbed rest is another issue. The emotional fatigue from unpredictability is yet another. Then comes Venus. This is where the chart becomes even more nuanced. Venus carries Kapha-Vata tendencies and is linked with the pelvis, kidneys, bladder, reproductive tissues, and the principle of lubrication, organic vitality, comfort, and bodily luster. So if Venus is part of this Vata-heavy pattern, I do not only think of pain, I think of reduced ease, reduced lubrication, pelvic discomfort, lack of softness in the tissues, and a decline in the body's ability to remain smooth, supported, and buffered. This matters a lot because sometimes the person will not say, I am in severe pain. Sometimes they will say, I do not feel comfortable in my body. That is Venus being disturbed inside a Vata field. So now bring the cluster together. Saturn dries, cools, restricts, and chronicizes. Ketu reduces, disconnects, and depletes. Moon sensitizes the experience and makes the condition emotionally lived. Venus shows the loss of lubrication, comfort, grace, and bodily ease. Now place all of that in the 9th house body zone, hips, thighs, sacral region, sciatic nerves, and pituitary linkage. And the picture becomes highly specific. You may be looking at a person with recurring or chronic sciatica, sharp sacral discomfort, hip instability, coldness in the lower body, difficulty sitting long, sleep disturbance due to pain, muscle depletion in the thighs, and a body-mind pattern where emotional strain worsens physical suffering. Now let me take you one level deeper because this is where the 9th house becomes profound. The 9th house is not only a body region. It is also a house of guidance, direction, higher meaning, and the path ahead. So when Vata disturbs the 9th house, movement itself becomes a teaching. The hips and thighs carry you forward. The sciatic channel supports locomotion. The sacral base stabilizes motion. So if this zone becomes dry, unstable, irritated, cold, and undernourished, the symbolism is exact. Forward movement in life loses smoothness. This is why I want you to stop doing lazy health astrology. Do not just say, Saturn in the 9th may give pain. That is shallow. Ask instead, what is drying out? What is losing support? What is becoming unstable? What is becoming chronic? What is becoming emotionally difficult to carry? What is losing lubrication and grace? What is becoming reduced or disconnected? That is how real interpretation works. And for healers, this matters even more. Because if you read this correctly, you stop offering vague statements. You begin recognizing a coherent field. Nerve irritation, lower body dryness, locomotion instability, pelvic and sacral discomfort, chronic cold Vata patterning, emotional sensitivity to pain, and possible hormonal irregularity through pituitary association. That is rigorous seeing, not one planet, not one symptom, not one dramatic conclusion. A cluster, a mechanism, a lived experience. That is the standard. And once you start reading charts at that level, your astrology becomes more useful, your healing language becomes more responsible, and your teaching becomes much more powerful. Because the body here is not just showing dysfunction. The body is saying you cannot keep moving without support. You cannot force direction when the base is unstable. You cannot ignore depletion and expect graceful motion. You cannot let dryness dominate and still expect ease. That is the real lesson of 9th house Vata disturbance. If this kind of deep Jyotish Ayurveda breakdown helps you see charts more clearly, subscribe and stay with this series because this is exactly the level at which healers and astrology students need to train their eyes. And if you want me to read your own chart for health patterns, soul path, relationship dynamics, or life direction, you can book a consultation through astrovagmi.com. I will see you in the next one.